I walked into my mother's 70th birthday party with a bouquet of lilies and a heart full of gratitude, only to freeze mid-step. There she was, my sister, Tiffany, in a satin pink dress, kneeling, not in prayer, not in apology, but in proposal, to my husband. Her hand trembled as she held out a diamond ring I had once helped her pick for someone else. Her voice was soft, trembling. Justin, I've loved you since before Jasmine ever knew what she had. And the man I once trusted with my soul said yes, in front of my mother, our guests, our family pastor, and God. No one said a word. Not even my mother, but I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I placed the flowers on the table, turned around, and by midnight, I had legally transferred every cent of our family estate, which was in my name, out of reach. They thought they took everything from me, but they never saw it coming. Everyone in Pasadena knew the Walker sisters, or at least they thought they did. I'm Jasmine Walker, the older sister, the one who stayed. The one who, at 38, owns Sweet Grace, the bakery on Maple Avenue where locals come not just for my hummingbird cakes, but for the way I remember their children's names and their anniversary dates. When our father walked out 25 years ago, leaving nothing but empty whiskey bottles and unpaid bills, I was 13. Tiffany was 8. Mom was broken, and I became the glue. Jazzy, will Daddy come back if I'm better? Tiffany asked me that night, her tiny fingers clutching her stuffed rabbit, the one with the missing ear. I remember smoothing her blonde curls, so different from my dark waves. It's not about being better, Tiff. Sometimes people just can't stay. But I promise I'm not going anywhere. And I didn't. I worked after school at Mrs. Peterson's flower shop, saving every dollar. When Tiffany needed braces, I sold the guitar Dad had given me before he left. When Mom couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments, I dropped my dream of culinary school and took a second job. Eventually, I built something from nothing. Sweet Grace, named after my grandmother, started as a single folding table at the farmer's market. One cake became 2, then 10, then a storefront with a pink awning and a line that stretched around the block on Saturday mornings. I met Justin when he came to order a birthday cake for his mother. 6 feet tall with shoulders that filled the doorframe of my tiny shop. He had a smile that made me drop a spatula full of buttercream. I've never seen anyone frost a cake like that, he said, leaning against my counter. It's like watching an artist. We were married within a year. He had dreams of opening his own gym, and I believed in him the way no one had ever believed in me. I took out a loan against the bakery to help him start. We put the business in my name for tax purposes, he said. Mom adored Justin. He's solid, she told me. A family man. And for a while, we were solid. He expanded to 2 gym locations. I opened a second bakery. We bought Mom's house when she couldn't keep up with the repairs, putting it in my name to protect her in case anything happened to her pension. You always were the responsible one, Mom said when we handed her the papers that made her debt-free but kept her in her home. Your father would be proud. I doubted that. Dad had been gone for 20 years by then. Last we heard, he had a new family in Arizona. I sometimes wondered if he made those children promises he actually kept. Tiffany floated in and out of our lives like a beautiful, chaotic butterfly. College for 2 semesters, then dropped out. A job at a marketing firm, quit after 3 months. A fiancé who lasted until she lost the 2-carat diamond I helped her pick at Tiffany & Co., a name match that made her giggle for days. You're too hard on her, Justin would say when I expressed frustration at another bailout, another crisis. Not everyone can be as strong as you. Maybe that was the beginning of the cracks. The way his eyes softened when he talked about her. The way he defended her when even Mom had given up. I remember the first time I felt that twist in my stomach. It was at Mom's 68th birthday, 2 years before everything fell apart. Justin had insisted on organizing the celebration a surprise party at our house. I was so touched by his thoughtfulness. I was in the kitchen, finishing the cake lemon with lavender frosting, Mom's favorite, when I heard Tiffany's laugh. That high tinkling sound that always made heads turn. I looked through the French doors to the garden and saw them, Justin and Tiffany, heads bent close, his hand on the small of her back. Just for a moment. Just a touch. Then he looked up and caught my eye through the glass. He smiled and waved me out. Come on, Baker girl. Your sister's just shown me the funniest video of Mom trying to use Instagram. I smiled back. Pushed the feeling down. Focused on the cake. 2 more years of moments like that. Small. Dismissible. Nothing I could point to without sounding paranoid or petty, until 3 weeks before Mom's 70th birthday, when she asked if we could host it at our house again. Of course, I said, already planning the menu in my head. You're always the one who holds us together, Jasmine, she said, squeezing my hand. I don't know what this family would do without you. If I had known those words would be tested so soon, maybe I would have held her hand a little longer. The signs multiplied in those 3 weeks. Justin's late nights at the gym. The whispered phone calls that ended when I entered a room. The way Tiffany suddenly wanted to help with party preparations, showing up at our house when she knew I'd be at work. 2 days before the party, Mom had a migraine so severe I took her to urgent care. Stress, the doctor said. I don't know what I'd do without you, Mom whispered as I drove her home. That house, everything we've built, I sleep at night because I know you'll protect it. I wonder now if some part of her knew. If mothers always know when storms are coming for their children. The morning of the party, I woke before dawn to bake. By noon, our garden was transformed white tables with hydrangea centerpieces, twinkle lights strung through the oak trees, a jazz trio setting up by the rose arch I'd woven by hand. Justin kissed my cheek as he left to pick up Mom. Everything looks amazing, he said. You really are incredible, Jazz. Was there sadness in his eyes? Guilt? Or was I projecting, looking back through the lens of what I know now? I spent the afternoon putting final touches on Mom's cake 3 tiers of vanilla bean with raspberry filling, decorated with sugar flowers that had taken me a week to craft. I didn't know then that in just a few hours, I would be watching that cake untouched as my world imploded. I didn't know that. The life I had built was about to shatter. Didn't know that the family I had held together was already broken beyond repair. September 3rd, 6:07 p.m. I'll never forget the time because I checked my watch. As I pulled into our driveway, worried I'd be late for the surprise despite being the host. I'd gone back to the bakery to retrieve Mom's gift, a custom locket with photos of the 3 of us Walker women inside. The garden was alive with laughter and conversation. 60-some guests mingled among the flower arrangements I'd spent days perfecting. The jazz trio played Sinatra, Mom's favorite. Everything looked like a scene from a magazine spread on perfect family celebrations. I spotted Justin first, standing beneath the rose arch, his expression unreadable. He was wearing the navy suit I'd bought him last Christmas, the one that made his blue eyes seem impossibly deeper. He wasn't mingling. He wasn't smiling. He was waiting. Then I saw Tiffany approach him, wearing a satin pink dress I'd never seen before. Her blonde hair was styled in loose waves, her makeup flawless. She looked like she was going to her own wedding. The thought hit me with a cold clarity that nearly stole my breath. No, it couldn't be. But then the music stopped. Conversations hushed. And in that sudden silence, I heard my sister's voice, amplified by the small microphone someone had handed her. Can I have everyone's attention, please? I stood frozen, bouquet of lilies clutched in my hands, as guests turned toward the rose arch. No one had noticed me yet, standing at the garden's entrance. I know this is unusual, Tiffany continued, her voice trembling with what I now recognize was not nerves but excitement. And I know some of you might judge me for what I'm about to do. She turned to face Justin, took his hand, and then in a move that will forever be burned into my memory, she knelt. Someone gasped. Camera phones came out. I saw Mom's face, confusion washing over her features as she sat in the place of honor, a crown of flowers on her silver hair. Justin, Tiffany said, looking up at my husband, I've loved you since the moment Jasmine first brought you home. I've tried to fight it. I've tried to deny it. But some feelings can't be buried. She reached into her purse and pulled out a ring box. I know it's wrong. But Jasmine never really saw you. She never appreciated what she had. I see you. I love you. And I know you love me. Time slowed. I felt suspended between heartbeats. Surely he would laugh this off. Surely he would step away in embarrassment, help my clearly troubled sister to her feet, and end this inappropriate display. But then came his answer. Yes. Loud. Clear. Without hesitation. I've been waiting for you to ask. And then, God help me, he bent down and kissed her. Not a peck. Not a friendly kiss. The kind of kiss that speaks of history, of intimacy, of betrayal. Someone finally noticed me then. Aunt Patty, Mom's older sister, turned and saw me standing there, lilies in hand, watching my life disintegrate. Her hand flew to her mouth. Others followed her gaze. A wave of silence spread across the garden, different from the hushed anticipation of moments before. This was the silence of collective shock, of witnessing something so transgressive, so painful, that no social script exists to guide the response. Justin and Tiffany broke apart, finally aware they had an audience beyond the circle of guests. Tiffany saw me first. She didn't look ashamed. She looked triumphant. "Jasmine," she said, her voice carrying through the silence, "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. We were going to tell you after Mom's party. Were they? Was that the plan? To humiliate me in private rather than public? As if that would have hurt less?" Justin finally met my eyes. "Jazz, But whatever explanation he had prepared died on his lips as I walked forward, each step measured and deliberate. I moved past stunned guests, past the table with gifts, past the cake I had spent hours creating. I approached my mother, whose eyes were filled with tears. I placed the lilies her favorite in the empty vase beside her. "Happy birthday, Mom," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake inside me. Then I turned to face the gathered crowd, my sister, and the man who was still. "Legally, my husband, please everyone enjoy the party. The cake is vanilla bean with raspberry, Mom's favorite," and with that, I walked away. Not running, not crying. Just walking with my head high through the garden gate, to my car, and out of the driveway. I drove to the one place I knew I could breathe sweet grace. My bakery. My creation. My sanctuary. And there, in the quiet of my kitchen, surrounded by the tools of the craft that had saved me once before, I did not collapse. I did not break. I planned, because what Tiffany and Justin didn't know, what they had forgotten in their selfish passion, was that everything was in my name. The house. The business. Mom's home. Even Justin's gym was co-owned by Sweet Grace Holdings LLC, a shell company I had formed years ago to manage our joint assets. By midnight, sitting at my office desk with my lawyer on speakerphone, I had initiated the process that would change everything. "Are you sure about this, Jasmine?" Richard asked, his voice grave. "Once we file these papers, there's no turning back." I looked at the wedding photo still sitting on my desk, Justin and me, smiling under an arch of roses not unlike the one where he had just betrayed me. "I'm sure," I said, removing my wedding ring and placing it beside the frame. "They took my trust. They took my dignity. But they won't take what I've built." By 12:03 a.m., with the press of a button, I flipped the switch on the life they thought they were stepping into, and I never looked back. The morning after Mom's party dawned with a clarity I hadn't expected. I woke on the small sofa in my bakery office, my neck stiff, but my mind sharper than it had been in years. My phone had 37 missed calls and 52 text messages. I ignored them all. Instead, I showered in the small bathroom we kept for staff, changed into the spare clothes I always kept at the bakery for early morning baking sessions, and began my day as if it were any other Monday. By 5:30 a.m., I had the first batch of croissants in the oven. By 6, I was piping rosettes onto cupcakes. When my assistant manager, Elena, arrived at 6:30, she stopped short at the sight of me. "Jasmine?" "I didn't expect—" She hesitated, and I knew immediately that she'd heard. In a town like Pasadena, news travels fast, especially news this sensational. "The raspberry filling needs more lemon," I said, not looking up from my work. "And we're low on almond flour." Elena nodded slowly, hanging her purse on the hook by the door. "I'll call the supplier." That was what I loved about Elena. No prying questions, no awkward sympathy. Just respect for my boundaries and a willingness to follow my lead. The morning rush came and went. I stayed in the kitchen, away from curious eyes and whispered conversations. Around 10 a.m., the bell above the door chimed, and I heard a familiar voice. "Is she here?" My mother. I wiped my hands on my apron and stepped out from the kitchen. Mom stood at the counter, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her silver hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail instead of her usual neat bun. "Jasmine," she whispered, and the single word carried a universe of pain. I gestured toward the small table in the corner, the one I kept reserved for special customers. We sat across from each other, two women united by blood but separated by an event neither of us had seen coming. "I didn't know," she said, her hands clutching a tissue. "I swear to you, I had no idea they were—" She couldn't finish the sentence. I believe you, I said, and I did. My mother had many flaws, but deception wasn't one of them. I asked Tiffany to leave my house this morning, she continued, her voice strengthening. I told her what she did was unforgivable. Not just to you, but to all of us. To the family we've tried to be. A small, bitter laugh escaped me. Family, is that what we are? We were. We are. Mom reached across the table but stopped short of touching my hand. What they did doesn't erase everything else. It doesn't erase you and me. I looked at her then, really looked. The woman who had fallen apart when Dad left. The woman I had spent my childhood trying to piece back together. The woman who had let me carry burdens no child should bear, but also the woman who had taught me to bake. Who had held my hand through my first heartbreak at 16. Who had wept with joy at my wedding. My wedding. The thought sent a fresh wave of pain through me. Justin called me, Mom said quietly. This morning. He said he went to the gym and couldn't get in. That his keycard didn't work. It doesn't, I confirmed. And it won't. Mom's eyes widened slightly. What did you do, Jasmine? I leaned back in my chair, suddenly tired. What I should have done years ago. I protected what's mine. Before she could respond, the bell chimed again. This time it was Richard, my lawyer, carrying a leather portfolio. Right on time, I said, standing to greet him. Mom looked between us. Confusion evident on her face. Mrs. Walker? Richard nodded politely. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Jasmine and I have some paperwork to go over. What paperwork? Mom asked, a note of alarm in her voice. I sighed. Mom, I need you to trust me right now. Everything I'm doing is to protect us, you, me, what we've built. From Tiffany? From Justin? From anyone who thinks they can take what isn't theirs. Richard cleared his throat discreetly. Jasmine, if we could, I nodded. Mom, I'll come by your house tonight. We'll talk more then. She stood reluctantly, gathering her purse. Promise me you won't do anything rash. The irony of her concern almost made me laugh again. Rash was proposing to your sister's husband at a family gathering. Rash was saying yes in front of 60 witnesses. What I was doing was calculated, deliberate, and long overdue. I promise I'm thinking very clearly, I said, which wasn't exactly what she'd asked, but it was the truth. After she left, Richard and I settled at the same table, and he opened his portfolio. The transfers went through, he said. All accounts have been secured. The trust is established with you as the sole trustee. Justin's business accounts have been frozen pending the separation of assets. I nodded, feeling a strange calm. And the cease and desist orders? Delivered this morning. To both of them. Richard looked at me over his glasses. Jasmine, you should know this is going to get messy. Justin is already threatening to sue for his share of the businesses. Let him try, I said, signing the documents he placed before me. Every partnership agreement, every property deed, every loan document has my signature on it. And I have 60 witnesses to what amounts to his public admission of adultery and intent to abandon the marriage. Richard's expression was a mixture of admiration and concern. You've always been 3 steps ahead. I just worry about the emotional toll this will take. I appreciated his concern, but emotion was a luxury I couldn't afford right now. I've been carrying this family for 25 years, Richard. The heaviest weight is already lifted. By mid-afternoon, the news had spread further. Justin had arrived at his gym to find the locks changed and a notice of business restructuring posted on the door. Tiffany had received formal notice that she was barred from all Walker family properties, including Mom's house, which was legally in my name, and I had received the first voicemail from Justin. His voice a mixture of rage and panic. What the hell are you doing, Jasmine? You can't just lock me out of my own business. This is illegal and you know it. Call me back. Now! I deleted it without a second thought. The second call came an hour later. His tone shifted to pleading. Jazz, please. I know you're hurt. What happened? It wasn't planned. Tiffany and I, we tried to fight it. We never wanted to hurt you. But you have to talk to me. We need to work this out like adults. Delete, by closing time. Elena had fielded 3 more attempts by Justin to reach me in person, turning him away each time with increasing firmness. He says he'll be back tomorrow, she reported, hanging up her apron. With a lawyer, I nodded, wiping down the last counter. That's his right. Elena hesitated by the door. Jasmine, are you okay? I stopped and really considered the question. Was I okay? My husband of 10 years had publicly left me for my sister. My family was in shambles. My personal life was now fodder for town gossip, but strangely, beneath the hurt and betrayal, I felt something else. Something that had been dormant for too long. I think I will be, I answered honestly. For the first time in a very long time. After Elena left, I locked up the bakery and drove to Mom's house, prepared for the conversation we needed to have. As I pulled into her driveway, I noticed Tiffany's red convertible parked at the curb, so she had ignored the cease and desist. Of course she had. Tiffany had been ignoring boundaries her entire life. I sat in my car for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. I could drive away, come back tomorrow when she was gone, but I was done running from confrontations. Done smoothing things over, done being the responsible one who never rocked the boat. I walked up the familiar path to Mom's front door, the same path I'd walked thousands of times bringing groceries, paying bills, fixing leaky faucets. I didn't knock. I used my key and stepped into the next chapter of a story I was finally ready to write for myself. They were in the living room. Mom perched anxiously on the edge of her favorite armchair. Tiffany sprawled on the sofa as if she owned the place. They both looked up when I entered, their expressions a study in contrasts. Mom's relief, Tiffany's defiance. Jazzy, Tiffany said, using the childhood nickname she knew I hated. I was wondering when you'd show up. I set my purse down on the entryway table. You received a legal notice this morning. You're not supposed to be here, Tiffany rolled her eyes. On my mother's property? Please, it's not her property, I said quietly. It's mine, Mom stood quickly. Girls, please. This isn't helping anything. She looked at me imploringly. Jasmine, I asked Tiffany to come. I thought maybe if we all talked— There's nothing to talk about, I interrupted, more sharply than I'd intended. I softened my tone. Mom, I'm sorry, but there are legal matters in motion now. Having this conversation with Tiffany present is inappropriate. Legal matters? Tiffany laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. Is that what you call stealing Justin's business? Freezing accounts that aren't even yours? I turned to face my sister fully. In her pink cashmere sweater and designer jeans, she looked every bit the spoiled, beautiful girl she'd always been. The girl everyone forgave. The girl who never had to face consequences. Every account I've frozen, every property I've secured, every business I've protected is legally in my name, I said evenly. I haven't stolen anything. I've simply reclaimed what's mine. What's yours? Tiffany stood now, her face flushing. That gym was Justin's dream. He built it from nothing. With my money, I corrected. With loans secured against my bakery. With my credit and my collateral and my name on every document. Because he trusted you. Tiffany's voice rose. Because we all trusted you to be the responsible one, not to use it against us. The irony of her accusation hit me like a physical blow. Trusted me? You betrayed me in front of our entire family, Tiffany. You took my husband. He was never really yours, she spat. Not in the ways that mattered. You were so busy being perfect, being the savior of this family, you never saw him. Never appreciated him. That's enough, Mom interjected, her voice trembling. Tiffany, that's more than enough. But Tiffany was beyond stopping. Justin and I have been in love for years. Years, Jasmine. While you were working late at the bakery, obsessing over your precious business, he was with me. And now you're punishing him, punishing us for finally being honest. I absorbed her words like bullets, each one finding its mark. Years, not months. Not a recent indiscretion. Years of deception, while I worked to build the life we all shared. Get out, I said, my voice deadly calm. This is my mother's house, Tiffany challenged. It's my house, I repeated. And you have 30 seconds to leave before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing. Tiffany looked to Mom for support but found none. Mom's face had hardened into an expression I'd rarely seen, disappointment and resolve. Go, Tiffany, Mom said quietly. Not forever. But for now. Tiffany's face crumpled momentarily before reforming into a mask of contempt. She grabbed her purse from the sofa and stormed toward the door, stopping just short of where I stood. This isn't over, she hissed. Justin has rights, and I'm not going to let you destroy him out of spite. It's not spite, I said, meeting her gaze. It's justice. After she slammed the door behind her, Mom and I stood in silence for several long moments. Finally, she sank back into her armchair, looking all of her 70 years and more. How long have you known? She asked. I moved to sit on the sofa, keeping my distance. Known what? About them? I didn't, not really. I suspected something wasn't right, but I never imagined. Not that. Mom shook her head. How long have you known that you would do this? The legal maneuvers, the businesses, the house, it's like you were prepared. I considered her question. I wasn't prepared for this specific betrayal, but I've always been prepared for the worst. It's what I do. Because of your father, Mom said softly. It wasn't a question. Because of everything, I corrected. Because life has taught me that security doesn't come from promises or feelings. It comes from contracts and deeds and signatures on dotted lines. Mom's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Jasmine. I failed you in so many ways. This isn't about you, Mom, isn't it? I let you become the parent when you were still a child. I leaned on you instead of supporting you. And when your father left, I taught you the worst lesson of all, that love isn't reliable. I felt a tightness in my throat. Love isn't reliable. That's not a lesson. It's a fact. No, Mom said firmly. That's the wound talking. Real love is the most reliable thing there is. What Justin and Tiffany did, that's not love. That's selfishness wrapped in pretty words. We sat in silence again, the weight of decades hanging between us. Finally, I stood. I need to get some sleep. It's been a long 2 days, Mom nodded. Will you stay here tonight? Your old room is still the same? The thought of sleeping in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by ghosts of the past, was unbearable. No, I'm going back to the bakery. I have an early start tomorrow. Always working, Mom murmured. Always taking care of everyone but yourself. I gathered my purse, suddenly exhausted. It's what I know how to do. Maybe it's time to learn something new, she suggested gently. Maybe it's time to let someone else carry the weight for a while. I laughed softly. And who would that be? You, Tiffany? Justin? No, she admitted. But there are people who love you, Jasmine. Really love you. Not just what you can do for them. I thought of Elena, steadfast and loyal. Of Richard, who had always looked out for my interests. Of the customers who came to Sweet Grace not just for the cakes, but for the woman who remembered their stories. Maybe Mom was right. Maybe there were people I could lean on just a little. I'll call you tomorrow, I promised, bending to kiss her cheek. As I drove back to the bakery, my phone rang. Justin again. This time I answered. Jasmine, thank God, he began. We need to talk. No, I interrupted. We don't. You made your choice, Justin. Now you get to live with the consequences. You can't just take everything. His voice cracked with desperation. The gym is my life. And you were mine, I replied, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. Funny how things change. I ended the call and blocked his number. Back at the bakery, I climbed the stairs to my office and collapsed onto the sofa. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and negotiations and more confrontations. But tonight, for the first time since I was 13 years old, I allowed myself to simply be not the responsible one. Not the fixer. Not the glue holding everyone together. Just Jasmine. Broken but breathing. Betrayed but unbowed. And somehow, in the quiet darkness of my sanctuary, that felt like enough. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through my office blinds and the distant sound of the early shift arriving downstairs. For a moment, in that hazy space between sleep and wakefulness, everything was normal. Then reality crashed back in and I remembered. My husband, my sister. The betrayal that had unraveled my carefully constructed life. I stretched, wincing at the stiffness in my back from another night on the office sofa. This couldn't continue. I needed to go home my home and reclaim my space. But the thought of returning to the house I'd shared with Justin, with its memories embedded in every corner, made my stomach clench. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Justin's lawyer is here. Says he has an appointment. I checked my watch. 7:15 a.m. They were getting an early start. I quickly freshened up in the small bathroom, changed into a spare outfit from my emergency drawer, and headed downstairs. In the bakery's front room stood a man I recognized immediately, Charles Drummond, one of Pasadena's most aggressive divorce attorneys. Beside him was Justin, looking haggard in yesterday's clothes. Good morning, I said calmly, gesturing toward my office. Shall we? Drummond followed me upstairs, but when Justin attempted to join us, I held up my hand. Not you. Just your lawyer. Jasmine, be reasonable, Justin pleaded. This is between us. It was between us, I corrected. Now it's between our attorneys. Once in my office with Drummond, I took a seat behind my desk, grateful for the barrier between us. He remained standing, looking down at me with what I assumed was supposed to be intimidation. "Mrs. Walker," he began, "my client is prepared to be generous in the divorce settlement. Despite your recent overreactions." I raised an eyebrow. "Overreactions? Is that what we're calling it when a wife responds to her husband publicly leaving her for her sister?" Drummond had the decency to look uncomfortable. "The personal aspects of this case are regrettable, but they don't justify what amounts to financial sabotage. The gym was purchased with funds secured against my bakery," I finished for him. "The property is owned by Sweet Grace Holdings, LLC, of which I am the sole legal owner. The equipment was leased through a business account to which I am the primary signatory." Drummond's expression shifted. "Mr. Walker has built that business over the past 8 years. His sweat equity is acknowledged," I interrupted again. "And I'm prepared to be fair." I slid a folder across the desk. "These are my terms. Justin may retain 25% ownership of the gym business, with no controlling interest. He may continue to work there as head trainer with a salary commensurate with industry standards. The business name and branding will change to remove the Walker name." Drummond scanned the documents, his frown deepening. "This is robbery." "No," I said softly. "Robbery is taking someone's trust, their love, their dignity, and treating it as worthless. This is business. My client won't accept these terms." I shrugged. "Then your client can explain to a judge why he believes he deserves more, given the circumstances of our separation. I'm sure the photos and videos from my mother's birthday party will make for interesting evidence." Drummond's jaw tightened. "You've clearly thought this through." "I've had a lifetime of preparing for disappointment. Mr. Drummond, this is just the latest chapter. After he left with my proposal, promising a counteroffer within days, I allowed myself a moment of quiet triumph. It wouldn't last. I knew the legal battle ahead would be draining, but for now, I had the upper hand." Elena appeared in the doorway. "Justin's gone." He looked devastated. "Good," I said, more harshly than I intended. Then, seeing Elena's surprised expression, I softened. "I'm sorry. That wasn't fair to you." She entered the office fully, closing the door behind her. "Can I say something? As your friend, not your employee?" I nodded, curious. "You've always been the strongest person I know," she said, settling into the chair across from me. "Even before all this happened. The way you built this place from nothing, the way you take care of everyone around you, it's amazing. But sometimes I worry you don't let yourself feel things." I started to protest, but she continued. "It's okay to be angry, Jasmine. It's okay to be heartbroken. What happened to you was terrible, and no one would blame you for falling apart a little." I looked down at my hands, surprised to find them trembling slightly. "I can't afford to fall apart, Elena. There's too much at stake." "I know," she said gently. "But maybe you don't have to do it all alone. The bakery can run without you for a few days. The lawyers can handle the divorce. Your mom has survived worse. And what would I do? Where would I go?" The questions came out more vulnerable than I'd intended. Elena smiled. "My sister has a beach house in Malibu. It's empty right now. They're in Europe for the month. You could go there just for a weekend, sleep, breathe, scream at the ocean. Whatever you need." The offer was tempting. So tempting that it scared me. "I don't know. Just think about it," she said, standing. "The key is yours if you want it." After she left, I turned to my computer and began working through emails orders for the week, supplier invoices, a catering request for a wedding next month. The irony of that last one wasn't lost on me. Around noon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but some instinct made me answer. "Jasmine Walker." My voice was all business. "Ms. Walker, this is Daniel Reeves from the Pasadena Register. I'm calling about the incident at your mother's birthday party." My blood ran cold. "No comment." "We've received several eyewitness accounts and—" "No comment." I ended the call, my hand shaking now for an entirely different reason. Of course this would become news. In a town like Pasadena, a scandal involving a local business owner was too juicy to ignore. And Tiffany had always loved attention, no matter how it came. I called Richard immediately. "The press is calling." "The Pasadena Register," he sighed. "I was afraid of this. How do you want to handle it?" I thought for a moment. "No comments, no interviews. Draft a simple statement if necessary. Something about respecting privacy during a difficult family matter. And if they run the story anyway?" "Then we weather it," I said, my resolve hardening. "I have nothing to be ashamed of. After hanging up, I found myself staring at the photos on my office wall, the ribbon cutting for Sweet Grace, Mom and me at the grand opening of the second location, Justin and me at the Chamber of Commerce Awards dinner last year. So many moments I'd thought were foundations, now revealed as facades. I took down the photos of Justin, placing them in a drawer. Not erasing him, I wasn't ready for that finality, but removing him from my daily sight. A small reclamation of my space. My phone buzzed again. A text from Mom, the newspaper called. I told them to leave my daughter alone. I smiled despite everything. Mom had her flaws, but when it counted, she was fierce in her protection. Another text followed. Come for dinner tonight? Just us. I hesitated, then replied, I'll bring dessert. That evening, as I drove to Mom's house with a freshly baked hummingbird cake, her true favorite, I felt a strange lightness. Not happiness, not yet, but perhaps the first hint that happiness might someday be possible again. Mom was waiting on the porch, 2 glasses of wine already poured. We sat in the warm evening air, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that reminded me of my most elaborate frosting techniques. I spoke to Tiffany today, Mom said after a comfortable silence. I tensed. And I told her she needs help. Professional help, Mom sipped her wine. I also told her that until she understands the damage she's done, she's not welcome in my life. I stared at her, stunned. Mom, I know, she said, her eyes sad but determined. She's my daughter and I love her. But loving someone doesn't mean enabling their worst behaviors. I should have learned that lesson long ago. We talked then. Really talked about everything, Dad's abandonment, the years I spent being both sister and surrogate parent to Tiffany, the patterns we'd all fallen into that had led us here. You know, Mom said as we finished the cake, your grandmother Grace used to say that crisis doesn't build character. It reveals it. I thought about that. And what has this crisis revealed about me? Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. That you're stronger than any of us knew. Even you. As I drove back to the bakery that night, Elena's offer of the beach house still lingered in my mind. Maybe a brief escape wouldn't be weakness. Maybe, just maybe, it would be the first step toward a new kind of strength. I sent her a text. Is that Malibu key still available? Her response came immediately. Always. Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow, I would go to the ocean and let myself feel everything I'd been holding at bay. But tonight, I would sleep in my office one more time, surrounded by the life I had built with my own hands, the one thing no one could ever take from me. The Malibu beach house was nothing like I'd imagined. I'd pictured something sleek and modern, all glass and steel perched precariously on a cliff. Instead, it was a weathered cedar cottage tucked behind sand dunes, with a wraparound porch and windows framed by faded blue shutters. It was perfect. I arrived late Friday afternoon, having left the bakery in Elena's capable hands with strict instructions not to contact me unless the building was literally on fire. The drive along the coast had already begun to work its magic. The rhythm of the ocean to my left, a soothing counterpoint to the chaos in my mind. The key was exactly where Elena had said it would be, under a conch shell by the back door. Inside, the house was all soft whites and blues, with driftwood furniture and shelves lined with dog-eared paperbacks. It smelled of salt and something citrusy, perhaps the bowl of lemons on the kitchen counter. I set my small overnight bag on the bed in the main bedroom, then opened the sliding glass doors that led directly onto the beach. The sound of waves rushed in, along with the cries of seagulls and the distant laughter of children playing, far down the shore. For the first time in days, perhaps, years, I took a deep breath that didn't feel like it was squeezed through a vice of responsibility. Kicked off my shoes and walked directly to the water's edge, letting the cold Pacific wash over my feet. The shock of it made me gasp, then laugh, a sound so foreign to my own ears that it startled me. When had I last laughed, truly laughed, without restraint? Before Justin's betrayal, certainly. But even before that, laughter had become a rare visitor in my life, replaced by the constant hum of obligations and expectations. I spent that first evening doing absolutely nothing productive. I found a half-empty bottle of decent red wine in the kitchen, poured myself a generous glass, and sat on the porch watching the sunset with my phone turned off and tucked away in a drawer. The silence was both terrifying and exhilarating. As darkness fell and stars appeared over the ocean, I felt the first crack in the armor I'd worn for so long. A single tear slid down my cheek, then another, and suddenly I was sobbing. Great, heaving cries that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than my diaphragm, somewhere ancient and wounded. I cried for the marriage I'd thought was solid. I cried for the sister I'd tried so hard to protect and support. I cried for the child I'd been, forced to grow up too fast. I cried for the woman I'd become, so focused on being strong that I'd forgotten how to be vulnerable. When the tears finally subsided, I felt hollowed out but somehow lighter, as if I'd expelled a poison that had been slowly killing me. I slept that night with the windows open, the sound of waves lulling me into the deepest sleep I'd had since the day of Mom's party. Morning brought a clarity I hadn't expected. I woke early, made coffee in the French press I found in the kitchen, and took it out to the beach. The sun was just rising, painting the sky and water in shades of pink and gold that no bakery frosting could ever replicate. I walked along the shore, letting my feet sink into wet sand, watching sandpipers dart away from incoming waves. Without conscious decision, I found myself talking aloud to the ocean, to the sky, to myself. I don't know who I am without him, I admitted. Without them. For so long, I've been defined by my relationships, the responsible daughter, the protective sister, the supportive wife. If I'm not those things anymore, what's left? A wave crashed louder than the others as if in answer. What was left was me. Just Jasmine. Not a role, not a responsibility. A person with desires and dreams beyond taking care of others. When had I last thought about what I wanted, just for myself? Not what would benefit the bakery or help Mom or support Justin's ambitions, but what would bring me joy. I couldn't remember. Back at the house, I found a notepad in a kitchen drawer and, sitting at the small dining table with a second cup of coffee, began to write. Not plans or lists or schedules, but dreams. Things I'd tucked away so deeply I'd almost forgotten they existed. Travel to Paris and study with a master pastry chef. Learn to paint, not well, just for the pleasure of color. Read novels in bed until noon on Sundays. Adopt a dog from the shelter, the older one no one wants. Dance again, not for an audience, just for joy. The list grew, each item a tiny rebellion against the constrained life I'd been living. By the time I filled a page, I was smiling, a genuine smile that reached somewhere deep inside me. I spent the day alternating between long walks on the beach and quiet moments on the porch, reading one of those dog-eared paperbacks, a mystery novel I would have dismissed as frivolous in my normal life. I ate when I was hungry, napped when I was tired, and didn't check the time once. As evening approached, I finally turned on my phone, bracing for the flood of notifications. There were several texts from Mom, checking that I'd arrived safely. A message from Elena confirming the bakery was still standing. And, unexpectedly, an email from Richard with the subject line, "Update, important." I opened it with trepidation. Jasmine. 2 developments you should be aware of. Justin's attorney has responded to our proposal. They're rejecting the 25% offer and demanding 50% ownership of the gym, plus a buyout for his share of Sweet Grace Holdings. I've attached their full counteroffer, but my recommendation is to hold firm. The Pasadena Register ran their story this morning. It's not as bad as it could be. They focused more on the business angle than the personal drama. I've included a link, but please don't feel obligated to read it now if you're taking time away. Take care of yourself. Everything here can wait until Monday. Richard, I hovered my thumb over the newspaper link, then decided against it. Whatever they'd written could wait. This weekend was for me. As the sun began to set, I opened the bottle of champagne I'd brought, an expensive one I'd been saving for a special occasion. This seemed fitting enough. I poured a glass and raised it toward the ocean. To reclamation, I said aloud. To starting over. I was halfway through my glass when headlights swept across the front of the house. A car door slammed, followed by footsteps on the porch and a knock at the door. For a moment, panic seized me. Had Justin somehow found me? Tiffany, a reporter? I approached the door cautiously. Who is it? Jasmine? It's me. Mom's voice, unmistakable even through the wood. I opened the door to find her standing there, a tote bag in one hand and a foil-covered dish in the other. Mom? What are you doing here? She looked uncertain for the first time I could remember. Elena told me where you were. I hope that's okay. I brought lasagna homemade. Not from a box. That was significant. Mom hadn't cooked a real meal since Dad left. Come in, I said, stepping aside. She entered, looking around appreciatively. This is lovely, peaceful. I took the lasagna, still warm, and set it on the kitchen counter. How did you find the place? GPS, she said with a small smile. I'm not completely helpless with technology, you know. There was an awkward moment as we stood in the kitchen, this new dynamic between us still finding its footing. I shouldn't have come without calling, Mom said finally. But I read that article and I needed to see you. What did it say? I asked, unable to help myself. Mom's expression darkened. It quoted Tiffany. She's painting herself as the victim, claiming you've always controlled the family, that you manipulated Justin into marriage, that you're now using your financial power to punish them for falling in love. My hand tightened around my champagne glass. And people believe her? Some might, Mom admitted. But not those who know you. Not those who matter. She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a folder. That's partly why I came. These arrived today. Inside the folder were dozens of cards and letters. I opened one at random, recognizing the handwriting of Mrs. Peterson, my first employer at the flower shop. Dearest Jasmine, I've known you since you were a girl with dirt under your fingernails from arranging roses after school. You have always been the hardest worker, the kindest heart, and the strongest spirit. Whatever they say, know that those of us who have watched you grow understand the truth. Your grace in difficulty only confirms what we already knew about your character. With love and admiration, Margaret Peterson. I looked up at Mom, tears blurring my vision. There are more? She nodded. They started arriving yesterday. Customers, neighbors, old friends. Even your high school English teacher. Word spreads fast in Pasadena, both the bad and the good. I set the letters aside, unable to read more without completely breaking down again. Thank you for bringing these. Mom hesitated, then asked, would you like me to stay? Just for dinner? Or I can go if you need to be alone. I thought about it, really thought about what I wanted, not what would please her or what was expected. Stay, I said finally. I'd like that. We ate lasagna on the porch, drinking champagne from mismatched mugs we found in the kitchen cabinets. As the stars came out, we talked not about Justin or Tiffany or the business or the drama, but about small things. Memories of beach trips when I was little. The novel Mom had been reading. The stray cat that had adopted her garden as its home. It was the first conversation we'd had in years that wasn't centered around a problem to solve or a crisis to manage. When she left, promising to visit me at the bakery when I returned, she hugged me tight and whispered, I'm so proud of the woman you've become, Jasmine. Not despite all this, but because of how you're handling it. I watched her taillights disappear down the coastal road, then returned to the porch and the sound of waves. Tomorrow would be my last day here, and then back to reality. The business, the divorce, the rebuilding, but I would return different. Stronger, yes, but also softer in the ways that mattered. More committed to protecting not just my assets, but my peace, my joy. My right to a life that belonged fully to me. I slept that night with the letters on the nightstand beside me, a chorus of voices reminding me that while family could wound deeply, community could heal just as profoundly, and for the first time since that moment at Mom's party, I didn't dream of betrayal. I dreamed of oceans and open skies and possibilities as endless as the horizon. Monday morning arrived with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Driving back from Malibu, windows down and music playing, something I rarely allowed myself, I felt not just different, but renewed. The weekend away hadn't erased the pain or solved the problems waiting for me, but it had given me perspective I desperately needed. I arrived at Sweet Grace earlier than usual, before any staff, and stood outside looking at the storefront with fresh eyes. The pink awning, the cursive lettering on the window, the display of sample cakes visible through the glass. All of it mine. Created from nothing but determination and a refusal to be defined by abandonment. Inside, I breathed in the familiar scents of vanilla and butter, running my hands over the marble countertops I'd saved for months to install. This place had always been my sanctuary, but I realized now it had also been my hiding place, somewhere I could pour all my energy and avoid confronting the emptiness. In other areas of my life, no more hiding. Was at my desk reviewing orders when Elena arrived. Surprise registering on her face when she saw me. You're back early? I didn't expect you until tomorrow, I smiled. I got what I needed. Thank you for the house, it was exactly what I needed. She studied my face. You look different. I feel different, I admitted. Like I've woken up from a long sleep, Elena nodded approvingly. Good. Oh, before I forget, she handed me a thick manila envelope. This came by courier on Saturday. Richard's office. Inside was the formal divorce petition, ready for my signature, along with updated financial documents showing the current status of all my accounts and properties. Richard had attached a note. Call me when you're ready to move forward. No rush, but I was ready. The sooner this chapter closed, the sooner I could begin the next one. I signed the papers immediately, placing them in the outgoing mail. Mid-morning, the bell above the door chimed, and I looked up to see a face I didn't recognize, a man in his early 40s with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair, dressed in the casual elegance of someone comfortable in their own skin. Can I help you? I asked, assuming he was a customer. He smiled, extending his hand. Michael Reeves. Pasadena Register. My guard immediately went up. I have no comment for the paper, Mr. Reeves. Actually, he said, his voice gentle, I'm here to apologize. The article we ran it wasn't balanced. My colleague only spoke with your sister and with Mr. Walker. I should have insisted on reaching out to you directly before publication. I was momentarily stunned. Journalists rarely admitted mistakes, especially not in person. Why are you telling me this? He placed a business card on the counter. Because I'd like to write a follow-up piece. About you, about Sweet Grace, about how you built something meaningful in this community. No questions about your personal life unless you want to address it. I picked up the card, turning it over in my fingers. Why would you do that? Because it's the right story to tell, he said simply. And because my mother has been buying your cinnamon rolls every Sunday for the past 5 years? She says they remind her of her childhood in Georgia. Despite myself, I smiled. Mrs. Reeves, of course. 2 cinnamon rolls and a coffee black, he nodded. See, that's exactly what I mean. You remember everyone. I told him I'd think about the interview, and he left without pressing. As the door closed behind him, Elena raised an eyebrow. Are you going to do it? I considered the question. Maybe. On my terms. The rest of the morning passed in a familiar rhythm of customers and baking, but I approached each task with a mindfulness I'd been missing before. I savored the weight of flour in my palms, the perfect spiral of cinnamon in each roll, the gratitude in customers' eyes when they took their first bite of something I'd created. Around noon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost sent it to voicemail, then decided against it. Jasmine Walker. Ms. Walker? This is Sarah Chen from First Community Bank. I'm calling about the loan application for Walker Fitness. My stomach tightened. I didn't submit any loan applications. There was a pause. The application was submitted by Justin Walker, with Sweet Grace Holdings listed as a guarantor. I'm calling to verify your authorization. Of course. Justin was trying to secure funding to buy me out or start over, using my business as collateral, likely assuming I wouldn't have changed the paperwork yet. I did not authorize that application. Ms. Chen and Sweet Grace Holdings cannot be used as a guarantor for any loans to Mr. Walker or Walker Fitness. In fact, I'll be sending formal documentation to that effect this afternoon. After hanging up, I called Richard to alert him to Justin's attempted end run. He wasn't surprised. It's a desperate move, he assured me. And it won't work. We've already filed notices with all major banks in the area. I thanked him, then added, the divorce papers are signed and on their way to you. That was fast, he commented. Are you sure? I've never been more certain of anything, I said, and meant it. Late afternoon brought another unexpected visitor, Pastor Matthews from Mom's church. The same man who had officiated my wedding 10 years ago and who had been a silent witness to its public dissolution. Jasmine, he said warmly as he entered the bakery. Do you have a moment? I led him to a small table in the corner, away from the few remaining customers. He declined my offer of coffee or pastry, instead getting straight to the point. I've been counseling your mother, he said. And separately your sister, I stiffened. I'm not interested in a reconciliation, Pastor, he held up his hands. That's not why I'm here. Reconciliation can't be forced, and it certainly can't happen without genuine repentance and changed behavior. Then why are you here? To check on you, he said simply. To see how you're doing, not as Tiffany's sister or Justin's wife or even Grace's daughter, but as Jasmine. Just Jasmine. The directness of his concern brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I'm finding my way, Pastor Matthews nodded. That's all any of us can do. But I want you to know something. What happened at that party? The congregation stands with you. Not out of pity, but out of respect for how you've conducted yourself through all of this. I wiped at my eyes, embarrassed. I haven't exactly turned the other cheek, Pastor. I've taken legal action. I've protected my assets. Turning the other cheek doesn't mean being a doormat, he said with surprising firmness. It means not responding to evil with evil. You've been firm but fair. You haven't sought revenge, just justice. There's a difference. His words eased something in me. A worry I hadn't fully acknowledged that in protecting myself, I had somehow become hard or vindictive. Thank you, I said. That means more than you know. After he left, I closed the bakery early, sending Elena and the other staff home with boxes of leftover pastries. Alone in the quiet shop, I made a decision. I picked up the phone and called Michael Reeves. I'll do the interview, I told him. But not about the scandal. About rebuilding. About what happens after the story everyone thinks they know. Even better, he said. When would you like to start? Now, I replied. If you're free. He arrived 20 minutes later and we talked for hours. I told him about starting Sweet Grace with nothing but determination and a recipe box inherited from my grandmother. About the community that had grown around the bakery. About my plans for the future, a cookbook, baking classes for underprivileged youth, maybe even a small cafe attached to the main bakery. I didn't mention Justin or Tiffany once, and to his credit, neither did he. When he finally closed his notebook, it was dark outside. This is going to be a great piece, Ms. Walker. Jasmine, I corrected. And thank you for listening. As I locked up behind him, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Dinner at my place tonight? I made your favorite pot roast. I smiled, remembering weeknight dinners from my childhood, before Dad left, when pot roast on Mondays was a tradition. I texted back, on my way. Driving to Mom's house, I realized I was humming an old song Dad used to play on his guitar. For the first time in years, the memory didn't sting. It was just a part of my story, neither defining me nor diminishing me. Mom was waiting on the porch much like she had been in Malibu, but this time with pot roast instead of lasagna. We ate at the kitchen table, talking about her garden plans for spring and the article that would run in the Register. I've been thinking, she said as we washed dishes side by side, a familiar routine from my youth. About selling this house? I nearly dropped the plate I was drying. What, why? I thought you loved this house. I do, she said, hands deep in soapy water. But it's too big for just me. And it holds too many memories, some good, some painful. I think I'd like something smaller, something that's just mine. I understood completely. What are you thinking? There's a little cottage for sale near the community center, with a garden big enough for my roses but small enough to manage. I could walk to my volunteer work, maybe even to Sweet Grace if my old knees cooperate. The idea of Mom closer, more independent but still nearby, warmed me. I think that sounds perfect, she smiled, relieved. I wasn't sure how you'd feel, since the house is technically yours. It's yours, Mom. Always has been. The deed might be in my name, but this is your home to do with as you choose. We finished the dishes in comfortable silence, then moved to the living room for tea. As Mom poured, she said casually, I saw Tiffany yesterday. I tensed. Oh? She came by to pick up some things she'd left here. She asked about you? What did you tell her? Mom looked me in the eye. I told her you're doing better than anyone could have expected. That you're strong in ways she can't understand. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She's moving to San Diego, Mom continued. With Justin. He's taking a job at a corporate gym chain there. I absorbed this information, surprised by my own reaction, not pain or anger, but a strange relief. They would be gone. Not just from my life, but from Pasadena entirely. I wouldn't have to worry about running into them at the grocery store or hearing their names in casual conversation. Are you okay? Mom asked, watching me carefully. Yes, I said, realizing it was true. I really am. Later that night, back in my office at Sweet Grace, I opened my laptop and began to write. Not business emails or order forms, but the first chapter of the cookbook I'd been dreaming about for years. I wrote about my grandmother's kitchen, about the comfort of creating something with your hands, about the way baking had saved me more than once. I wrote until the sky outside began to lighten, words flowing more freely than they ever had before. And as the first hints of dawn touched the bakery windows, I knew with absolute certainty that this moment of creation, of self-expression, of joy in my craft, was what I had been missing. not Justin. Not some idealized version of family. Just the freedom to be fully, authentically myself, and no one could take that away from me. Not ever again. 6 months passed in a blur of activity and transformation. The divorce was finalized with surprising efficiency, Justin accepting my terms once his lawyer made it clear that fighting would only drain what resources he had left. The gym was rebranded as Pasadena Fitness Collective, with Justin's 25% share bought out by a silent investor, Elena's brother, as it turned out, who had always admired the business from afar. Mom sold her house and moved into the cottage near the community center, filling it with only her favorite pieces from the old house and buying new, lighter furniture for the rest. I helped her plant roses along the front walkway, and together we painted the kitchen a sunny yellow that made even rainy days feel bright. Sweet Grace expanded, not with another location as I'd always planned, but in a different direction. I converted the storage space next door into a teaching kitchen where I held classes 3 evenings a week, basic baking for beginners, advanced pastry techniques, and my favorite, a free Saturday morning class for children from the local shelter. The article Michael Reeves wrote ran on the front page of the lifestyle section with the headline, "Rising from Flower: How Jasmine Walker Built a Community, One Cake at a Time." It was everything he promised, focused on my business journey, my connection to Pasadena, and my plans for the future. There was only one oblique reference to personal challenges that had tested but not broken my resolve. The response was overwhelming. Orders doubled. Class registrations filled within hours, and my inbox overflowed with messages from women sharing their own stories of betrayal and rebuilding. I answered every one. On a crisp October morning, exactly 7 months after Mom's birthday party, I stood in Sweet Grace surveying the changes. The pink awning was now a deep plum, the logo redesigned to feature a hummingbird hovering over a cake, a nod to both my grandmother's favorite recipes and the idea of finding sweetness even in flight. The interior had been refreshed with comfortable seating areas where customers could linger, and shelves displaying local pottery filled with flowers from Mrs. Peterson's shop. Elena now managed the daily operations, her promotion long overdue. I focused on recipe development, teaching, and the cookbook that had grown to 15 chapters and caught the interest of a small but respected publishing house. The bell above the door chimed, and I looked up to see Michael Reeves entering, a newspaper tucked under his arm. "Good morning," I greeted him, now accustomed to his regular visits. After the article, he'd become a frequent customer, often bringing his laptop to work while enjoying our pastries. "The usual," he nodded. "Cinnamon roll and black coffee. And this." He placed the newspaper on the counter, folded to show a small announcement in the business section. "Walker Fitness files for bankruptcy in San Diego," the headline read. The brief article detailed how Justin and Tiffany's attempt to establish a new gym had failed after just 4 months. I pushed the paper back toward him. "I don't need to read that." "I thought you might want to know," he said, looking slightly embarrassed. "I appreciate the thought," I said, handing him his coffee. "But their story isn't mine anymore," he nodded, understanding. "By the way, how's the cookbook coming?" "Almost finished. Just the final chapter left. The editor at Bay Publishing can't wait to see it. She says personal narratives combined with recipes are selling like hotcakes." He grinned at his own joke. I laughed, sliding his cinnamon roll across the counter. "That one's on the house," for the terrible pun. After he settled at his usual table, I returned to the kitchen where a batch of lemon tarts was cooling. As I carefully arranged crystallized violets on top of each one, I thought about how much had changed in 7 months. Not just the bakery or my living situation. I'd finally moved out of the office and into a small but sun-filled apartment above a bookstore downtown. But me. I was lighter somehow, more present in each moment. I laughed more easily. I took Sundays off, completely off. No emails or planning or inventory checks. I'd even started dating cautiously, a kind architect I'd met through the Chamber of Commerce. Nothing serious yet, but enjoyable. Normal. The back door opened, and Mom entered carrying a basket of fresh herbs from her garden. "Delivery for the chef," she announced, setting the basket on the prep table. "Mint, basil, and that lemon thyme you wanted to try in the shortbread." "Perfect timing," I said, hugging her. "Want to stay and help with the afternoon class? We're doing French macarons." Mom's eyes lit up. Since moving to the cottage, she'd become an enthusiastic baker, often assisting with my classes. I'd love to. My book club isn't until 7. We worked side by side, preparing for the class, falling into the comfortable rhythm we'd developed over recent months. As we measured almond flour and separated eggs, Mom said casually, "I got a letter from Tiffany yesterday." My hand stilled briefly, then continued sifting. "Oh, she's coming back to Pasadena, alone." I absorbed this information, waiting for the spike of anxiety or anger. "It didn't come. Justin?" I asked, more out of curiosity than concern. "Gone to Arizona," she said. "To find your father." I almost laughed at the poetry of it. Justin following the path of the man whose abandonment had shaped so much of my life. They deserve each other. Mom nodded, watching me carefully. Tiffany asked if she could see me. "And you, if you're willing." 7 months ago, even 3 months ago, my answer would have been an immediate, emphatic no. But now, with the distance of time and healing, I found myself considering it. "What do you want?" I asked Mom. She sighed, cracking an egg with practiced precision. "I want my family. As much of it as can be salvaged. But not at the expense of your peace, Jasmine. Never that." I thought about Pastor Matthews's words about reconciliation requiring genuine repentance. If she's truly sorry, not just sorry things didn't work out with Justin, but sorry for the betrayal itself, I might be willing to hear her out. Eventually. Mom's smile was cautious but hopeful. "That's more than I expected." "Thank you." The afternoon class filled the bakery with laughter and the sweet smell of almond and sugar. 12 students, ranging from college age to retirees, gathered around the teaching island as I demonstrated the proper technique for macaronage, the folding of dry ingredients into the meringue. Mom circulated, offering encouragement and practical tips from her growing experience. As I watched her with the students patient, nurturing, confident, I marveled at how she had blossomed in her new life. The woman who had once been paralyzed by my father's abandonment now hosted dinner parties, volunteered at the literacy center, and had recently signed up for a watercolor class. Perhaps we had both needed to be uprooted to find new growth. After the class, as we cleaned up together, Mom asked, "Will you come for dinner on Sunday?" "I'm trying a new recipe." "Of course," I said, wiping down the stainless steel counters. "Can I bring anything?" "Just yourself," she said. Then, hesitating, "And maybe that architect friend of yours?" "David, right?" I raised an eyebrow. "Are you trying to play matchmaker, Mom?" She laughed, a sound that had become wonderfully common. "Maybe a little. He seems nice from what you've told me. And he appreciates good food. I'll ask him," I promised. Surprised to find I liked the idea. Later that evening, after Mom had left for her book club and the bakery was closed, I sat at my desk working on the final chapter of my cookbook. It had been the hardest to write, not a collection of recipes, but a personal essay about transformation, about finding sweetness after bitterness, about the alchemy that turns basic ingredients into something greater than their parts. I stared at the blank page, fingers hovering over the keyboard, searching for the right words to conclude my story. Not just the cookbook, but this chapter of my life. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. An unfamiliar number with a San Diego area code. Tiffany. I let it ring 4 times, contemplating whether to answer. Finally, I picked up. "Hello, Tiffany?" A pause, then her voice smaller than I remembered. "Jasmine." "You answered." "Yes," another pause. "I didn't expect you to." "That makes 2 of us," I said, surprised by the lack of venom in my voice. "I'm coming back to Pasadena," she said unnecessarily. "Things didn't work out here. So I heard. Jasmine, Her voice broke. "I don't even know how to begin." "Then don't," I said, not unkindly. "Not over the phone, anyway. Can I see you when I get back?" "Not right away." I know I have work to do first." I considered her request, searching my heart for the truth of what I wanted, not what was expected or what others might think was right. "Maybe," I said finally. "Not a promise, but a possibility. Start with Mom, she misses you." "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't deserve even that much." "Probably not," I agreed. "But that's the thing about grace, Tiffany. It's never deserved. That's what makes it grace." After we hung up, I turned back to my cookbook manuscript, the conclusion suddenly clear in my mind. I began to type, "Baking like life is about transformation. Flour becomes bread. Bitter chocolate becomes sweet dessert. And sometimes broken hearts become stronger ones. The recipes in this book are more than instructions for creating delicious treats. They are invitations to create moments of joy, to transform ordinary ingredients into expressions of love, to find sweetness even in the aftermath of bitterness. I learned to bake at my grandmother's side, finding sanctuary in the precise measurements and predictable chemistry of the kitchen. When life was chaotic and painful, baking was my constant. My way of creating order from disorder, beauty from basic ingredients. But the greatest lesson baking has taught me is this. Sometimes the most magnificent creations come from complete collapses. The fallen soufflé becomes a mousse. The cracked cake becomes trifle. The burned edges are trimmed away to reveal the perfect center, and so it is with us. Our failures, our heartbreaks, our shattered expectations, these are not the end of our story. They are simply moments of transformation, opportunities to create something new from the ruins of what was lost. Sweet Grace was born from my grandmother's recipes, but it was built on resilience, on the belief that something wonderful was waiting to rise from the ashes of disappointment. Each day as I open the bakery doors, I am reminded that life, like baking, rewards patience, precision, and the courage to begin again when things fall apart. Whatever challenges you face, whatever heartbreaks you endure, I hope you find your own version of sweet. Grace, that place where your broken pieces reassemble into something stronger and more beautiful than before, because the most important ingredient in any recipe isn't found on the shelves or in the refrigerator. It's the belief that with the right combination of effort, time, and care, transformation is always possible. Even from the most broken beginnings, something sweet can rise. I sat back, reading over what I'd written, a sense of completion washing over me. This was how my story ended, not with revenge or bitterness, but with the quiet triumph of creating something meaningful from pain. I saved the document, closed my laptop, and looked around the bakery, my sanctuary. My creation, my Sweet Grace. Outside, the Pasadena evening was settling into dusk, lights coming on along the street. Inside, the lingering sense of sugar and vanilla wrapped around me like an embrace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new recipes, perhaps even new relationships. But tonight, in this moment of reflection, I was exactly where I needed to be. I had entered my mother's birthday party with flowers and a heart full of hope, only to watch my world collapse in betrayal. But I had emerged not just surviving, but thriving, stronger, wiser, and finally, truly my own. And that was the sweetest victory of all.